Welcome to Ramble City.
This is Ramble City. I am Bradley McCaw, and we talk about music, the biz, backstage, juicy tales of how the iconic songs and the great moments in music history came to be. And today we have the privilege of chatting to the one and only Russell Morris, a legendary Australian musician, ARIA Hall of Fame guy, the man that recorded one of those, iconic songs that kind of transcend the business and become just part of the fabric of culture in this country, and that of course is The Real Thing. And we have found some old footage which we're going to surprise him with later. I'm so excited that he's stopped by Ramble City to talk about his latest album with Rick Springfield. Russell Morris, welcome to Ramble City. Thank you for coming by.
Thanks, Bradley. Good to be with you.
How are you today? Other than me sending you this link very late, I was a bit cheeky this morning, wasn't I? But I put on a jacket. I've got a rule that when you talk to a legend, you wear a jacket. So that's why I've dressed up.
That's all right. Well, I've got no trousers on, so it's okay.
Good. That's really that is how we like to roll in Ramble City. So before we sort of get into the Day of the Dead album, before we kind of dig into that, I want to start with a quick pop quiz. Okay. Do you know how many studio albums you've released? Do you keep a tally in your mind?
No, I don't.
How's it? He's working it out. He's
about
counting.
13, maybe 14. Yeah,
14 it is. There you go. 14. That's by my count, by the Spotify count anyway. And so for everyone at home, if you bear in mind that Real Thing came out in 1969 and 14 so albums later, or I guess 13 before the one we're going to talk about today, I wanted to sort of set the table to talk about something that happened that was new for you in your career, where you, and I hope it's fair to say that, you came up with this idea to write blues songs about a gangster from Sydney. And that's kind of like, I know that's 3 albums ago, but how did this come about? And then we'll dig into how that sort of feeds into this album. But tell us about who Shark Jaws is and how you came across this character.
Well, what happened, I was taking a long, hard look at myself.
Right.
And I'd been writing songs, and I thought I'd produced a couple of really good albums that had sunk without a trace.
Right.
And I thought, what am I doing here? Why am I missing the mark? What is it?
Right.
So I stood and looked at myself in the mirror, and I thought, what do people see when they see me? And then I looked at my songs, and I thought, I'm trying to chase the Pied Piper here. I'm trying to be a pop, writing pop songs.
Yeah.
It just doesn't go with the image. And I thought, maybe I'll go back to what I started doing, which was blues and rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
And it's probably more befitting of my station in life that I'll do songs. So I started writing some blues songs, and I'd probably written about 3 or 4, and I still wasn't engaged in them very well, because my favourite artists in the blues genre are John Lee Hooker and Howling Wolf, and I was probably trying to emulate them.
It's a traditional stuff that feels very authentic, very real, one take kind of vibe, It's
That's
like
right.
authentic for people that don't know who those guys are. Right.
And it was more the subject matter that I was writing about. And then I was in Sydney, and I saw a newspaper article about Thomas Archer, and it was his photograph, his police photograph from 1916. And it just transfixed me. I thought it was a wonderful photograph. So I took it home, and one rainy afternoon in Melbourne, I was sitting there and I was looking at the photograph, and I thought, I'll write a song about this guy because he's so intriguing. Soon as I wrote the song, it was almost like I was Howard Carter, who had just opened up Tutankhamun's tomb, and when he was looking in, shining a torch in, and someone from behind him said, "What do you see?" And he said, "Beautiful things."
Wow.
And that's what I saw. As soon as I wrote the song about him, I thought, that's why I'm not getting the songs right. I'm trying to write about subjects that are in Mississippi and New Orleans. I'm not American. My roots aren't American. I've got to write blues and roots songs about my roots that matter to me and matter to the people that I know and all my ancestors. I've got to be honest to my ancestors, not to someone else's ancestors. So I wrote from that point of view, and that's how that happened, yeah.
That's an incredible story, Russell. Thanks for sharing that, because, when I was kind of doing my research, as I like to do, I saw that in the 70s, you went to London to plan to make a record, and then, that didn't necessarily go the way that you'd expected, as often is in the business, and then you went to New York and did that there, and then eventually came back and continued in Australia, kind of, being, kind of one of our historical heroes, I guess, in my mind as a music fan, as a music lover and loving history, And it's interesting to say that somewhere again along the line you went, well, this is kind of what I do and this is part of who I am, but still paying tribute to that sound because it sounds authentic. I'm a blues man. Like, it still feels like the blues, but it just feels like you're talking about people from down under.
Yeah, well, it's Australian blues. Like in the past, I think there'd been a couple of blues songs about. I think Chris Wilson did a couple of historical blues songs, but never a whole album. And usually in the past, the songs about Australia were well, he came down from Narnagoon with the banjo on his back, and he went on to that sort of stuff.
Right.
And I thought I'm not particularly into that sort of music. And oddly enough, which is odd, I was nominated for a golden guitar, but a couple of people in Tamworth got their noses right out of joint and started and threatened to quit the CM Country Music Board if I went through as the nomination. And someone said, but he's been nominated by 600 people who we vote with. And they said, no, it's not going to happen. And what they failed to realise that country and blues were sleeping in the same bed very early on.
Yeah.
If you listen to Leadbelly's songs, Leadbelly was like one of the kings of blues, but one of his songs is Good Night, Irene, Good Night, Irene, one of the biggest country songs of all time. And a lot of those blues guys did that. They would cross over, and it was like that. And then all of a sudden the Cowboys came along.
Yeah.
Gene Autry and all those. It was home on the range. And then they just went in completely different directions.
Yeah, well, look at Ray Charles, right? This is the guy that plays soul and rhythm and blues at the height and the beginning of that, that part of that sound. And he's like, here comes a country hit.
That's right. I can't
stop loving you.
Exactly right. But people here refused to take that into account. They thought the blues was like the devil's music.
Yeah.
The country people here, I was the devil. I was bringing up the devil, so.
It's interesting too, because something I was going to say and ask you about is the blues has always been in your music. From an outsider. Yes. Well, I mean, in the roots of it, though, in the heart of it. And I mean, that just speaks to that is the heart of pop music and rock music, like you're saying. It's blues, it's gospel, it's country. It's,
It's even more there than you realise.
Yeah.
One of my favourite bands played on Sweet Sweet Love, which you could probably look at as a very schmaltzy pop song.
Mm.
But the band that played on that was Chain, one of my favourite bands, and they were my friends because I loved them. They were blues, and I said, will you play on? And they played that song. So it was a total blues band that played Sweet Sweet Love.
This is like a study on its own, isn't it? Kind of pulling off that Tupperware lid into the history of sort of saying, these guys play this, but it's like the big jazz cats of the 70s and 80s that are playing on all these like 70s AM hits.
Yeah,
70s
right.
AM hits that are like these insane jazz cats that are, just, playing super out there stuff in their free time and then winding it back just for the session,
That's right. Exactly.
It's incredible.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the story then about Sharkmouth, your album that sort of started this concept kind of project, if I can call it that. We're going to dig into what you're going to call it later. But so you wrote these songs and then you started shopping them around, and you already said then that you were kind of in this process of working out what it is maybe that hadn't been hitting the mark. What happened when you started shopping the songs around?
Everyone hated it. Everyone hated it. People were saying, why would you do a blues album? No one likes the blues, and it's about Australian history. No one's really interested.
That's three things we hate, Russell. What are you doing? It's
That's unbelievable. And I said, I don't care. I said, I just wanted to do it. I said, I don't care. I'll release it myself because some of the big record companies all passed on it. And I pressed 500 copies just to sell at shows. And Robert Rigby from Ambition Records heard it, and he said, listen, we'll run with it. And it sort of was slow to take off. And then all of a sudden it just went through the roof. And it sold truckloads of records, much more than the 500 that I'd pressed.
Well, let's have a quick listen before we keep talking about it. Here's a song from the record. Black Dog Blues got me doing my trademark blues shuffle head. Sometimes I like to add in the little finger points when I'm rocking it. Just feels good. Sometimes, there's just these albums that you put on, you go, everyone knows what they're doing or what they want to do, and it just sits and you just get sucked into this world of just these musicians doing what they do really well. Did it feel like that in the sessions? Did you feel like this just feels good? Was it just did it
Yeah,
just make sense?
it did to me. And I thought, gee, I've gone back to where I started, because when I first started the band that we had, we played blues, rhythm and blues, and Tamla Motown. That's what I grew up with. And then Molly Meldrum came along and said, you guys have to get a bit more commercial. And the band I was in, we had a couple of commercial hits, and then I went solo. But I went back to what I started doing, because I remember the first album that started me into rock and roll music. My cousin rang me up and said, come down. So I went down to his place, and he played me the very first Rolling Stones album with I'm a King Bee and Can I Get a Witness? And I was just transfixed. I thought, this is unbelievable. And then I noticed that they were blues aficionados. So I started listening to John Lee Hooker and Howling Wolf, and listening to all that stuff as well as Tamla Motown. That's what got me into the music business, and that was my first love. And when I had to reassess myself and I'm lost, where am I going? What am I doing? I thought, what got me into music? What did I love? What was the thing that first grabbed my heart? So I went back to that, and fortunately, my heart paid off in that. Yeah.
Sometimes the heart has a way of repaying us for following it. Sometimes it just sort of, doesn't.
Can destroy you, yeah.
But that's why we write songs. So I guess we're kind of winning either way. So there's something that I've always wondered too, with kind of, talking to a legend like yourself. It's, from making music from the 60s to now, the time has changed so much. Each decade a new sound moves, it comes along. Do you actively feel like you're moving with that? Or do you feel like you're just inspired by what you're hearing at the time? You got the psychedelics in the 60s, and we're going to talk about the real thing later. We've got something to play you. The 80s pop sound, and sort of a 90s kind of rock feel. It's all there in the albums, a folk sound in the 60s too. Were you actively aware of that, or were you just playing what felt good?
I was too actively aware of it.
Right.
Until I did Sharkmouth. I was trying to follow the Pied Piper. Like a lot of other acts, you look at the charts and you look at record companies and radio stations who only want to play, like, we need a new Ed Sheeran, we need a new Taylor Swift, we need a new. So that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So consequently, you want to be able to survive and eat. And you've had stuff in the past, and everyone has sort of penciled you off as an old has-been.
Yeah.
So you think, I would love to be current. I just don't want to keep playing my old songs forever. I'd love to be sort of current. But the problem is when people do that, they make the mistake of trying to repeat what they've done in the past.
Right.
And a lot of the audiences have moved on. You've got loyal fans, but it's not grabbing anyone's attention. And so what you do, you may be writing better songs than you were than when you first started, but you're still doing exactly the same dance. And it's not anything different enough. And for me, I've always tried to change, but I still tried to do that dance until I thought to myself, I took a good look at myself, as I said, and thought, hang on, I'm too old to be doing that. I've got to do what looks legitimate for me and what I feel like I want to do, what I want to write about. And forget commerciality. Because I just started on a new album. I played it to some people, and they said, well, gee, that's not commercial. I said, I'm not doing it I'm doing it because I want to do it. That's what I
don't know
want
if you
to
know,
do.
the last time I did an album not for commercial reasons, it did pretty darn well. It went platinum. It won Blues Record of the Year of the ARIAs. That's not terribly uncommercial.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. To do it, if you're the best polka player in the world, and your love is for polkas, don't go trying to be Taylor Swift. Play polkas.
I don't know. That'd be a great polka version of Love Story.
That's right. Yeah, but you can't be what you aren't. You've got to be what you are and what you really love. You can't. It's, for instance,
but the music business is fickle, Russell. Like you. This is what you're saying to us. It's like it's, and I think that's one thing that people don't completely understand as an audience, and maybe they don't have to, because they're meant to just enjoy what we're making. But at the same time, it's a very precarious situation that an artist finds themselves in with trying to make music and, as you said, keep somewhat in the times and stay somewhat authentic.
Well, it is really difficult becoming now. I noticed someone the other day, of some friends of mine, a Busby Maru, a lovely band.
Yeah,
They've recorded a whole lot of stuff. They said, "Oh, what are you doing?" They said, "Oh, we're just going to release singles." I said, "What do you mean? Why not an
yeah,
album? People's attention span isn't long enough."
yeah.
So they're releasing singles. And when I've released concept albums, people thought I was crazy. And I've just said, listen, it's what, I don't care. That's what I want to do. If people don't like it, I can't, well, I can't tear my hair out because that's but I can't be concerned with that. I'm only concerned with what I want to do.
Yeah.
And if people don't like it, I can't help that. I'm doing it as honestly as I can.
Was
And
that something you've
that's
got
what I
better
think.
at over time? Is that something that you've been able to, is that part of building a career, is building the way to grow with the career and sort of how you last in that and
Yeah.
understand that stuff?
I think you got to listen, as I said before, to a voice. Like once I'll do an album. It's almost like I'm standing on the edge of a greased slope,
Right.
and I can't. There's no resistance. I slide that way, and I may slide that way for 3 albums, but all of a sudden I reach the bottom of the valley, and then I'll wander around and do nothing for a long time, and then something will take my interest, and it may be completely against the grain of everything, but it's something that I'm really interested in, and I know when I can't resist it because I'll write a song. Sometimes I'll write a song and it'll just sit there, and then I'll write another song, it'll sit there. Then I'll write one song, and that song is like a signpost. And it's almost like you're on the slippery slope again, and it pulls you. The gravity pulls you down. It's like I always explain it. Well, I'm a big science person. I love anything to do with quantum physics. I always believe that it's like a bucket of marbles. You can tip it down the hill, and they will go everywhere.
Mm.
They'll go into little eddies, but they'll always end up in the same place. So you end up going down in a quantum avalanche, so to speak, that you can't resist. It's something that drives you, particularly me. And if I get into a style of something that really drives me, someone could say, "Can you write us a commercial song? Like we want a song for that." I just can't. I'm
Yeah.
not in that headspace. I'm going somewhere else. And that's unfortunately uncontrollable for me. And sometimes that's been a disaster because it hasn't worked. The audience haven't liked it at all, and
Mm.
record buyers haven't really responded.
And that's just part of the eddies and flows
I think so,
of
yeah.
a creative career.
Yeah, and the spinning roulette wheel because sometimes you're on the up and sometimes you're on the down, and you're not. People aren't relating to what you're doing. That that's the way it is.
That's
You just
par for the course.
yes, par for the course. You just have to do it with. Jim Keys once said to me from The Master's Apprentice, he said, "You got to do another album." I said, "Why would I do another album?" He said, "Because," I said, "No one buys my albums. No one plays them because radio thinks I'm an old has been,
Yeah.
and TV won't touch me with a barge pole because I frighten the kiddies." So, and he said, "But you have an obligation." I said, "Who to?" He said, "To your creativity." He said, "You have been born with what you can do. You have an obligation." He said, "If you were a great cabinet maker and you made beautiful antique cabinets," he said, "would you stop?" He said, "No, you'd make another one and you'd put it in storage." He said, "Your obligation is to make another album and to add it to your body of work." And I said, "All right, well, if you're such a smart aleck, you write some songs with me because I'm going to do a blues album." And he said, "I'd love to." And that was the beginnings of Sharkmouth.
Wow. All right. Well, let's have a listen to one of the newer cabinets you've been working on. One that has another collaborator with Rick Springfield. You can tell us all about this new project you guys are doing together. Let's start with the opening number from that. Let's have a listen.
I am Jack Chrome.
I am Jack Chrome from the new album. I actually was confused about what the title of the album was until I knew that it was Jack Chrome and the Darkness Waltz, because there's the Morris Springfield project. There's the Day of the Dead. There's so many amazing parts of this to dig into. Russell, can we start by just talking about the slight Tom Waits kind of feel that's at the top of this that I saw someone on YouTube describe as a haunting merry-go-round, which I think is the brilliant explanation of what that is. That sort of, just brings the listener into the world of this album and of the basis of the record, which is the Day of the Dead. So how did this one come about, the Day of the Dead?
This one came about. It's that's flattering. Someone said Tom Waits. That's nice. I'm befitting my age and singing about subjects that I like. It came about like Sharkmouth, an accident. I lived in Los Angeles for a number of years, and the first Day of the Dead, Dias de los Muertos festival I stumbled upon, I thought it was a voodoo festival because there were all these skulls and things. And I thought, oh, this must be voodoo or something. These people must be Haitian or something like that. And I had a Mexican friend, he started laughing and he explained how beautiful it was that they invite all the spirits of the lost loved ones back for 2 weeks to party and be with them. And they put ofrendas up in their houses, which are altars, and it's a joyous, beautiful occasion, and everyone dresses up in bright hats and paints their faces in skulls, and all the dead come from the city. There's a mythical city. And I didn't think any more about it. And I came back to Australia and I was writing you remember I said before, I write songs and I'll put one here and one there and one there, and they just sit there. And one song sort of stuck out to me and I really liked it. And that was Carmelita's Dance. And I said to my wife, I said, I want you to film me. I'm going to do this in Day of the Dead makeup because I really like this concept. I just love that. It's a beautiful concept. And I'd lost a lot of people, and it's sort of, I just love the fact of the joyousness of it. And
calling them back and
and
celebrating with them in spirit.
I wrote the song, Donna filmed me, and I said, I'm going to put it up on YouTube anonymously. And she said, well, how will anyone find it? You can't put it up anonymously. You've got to put it up as something. And I said, I'll put it up as Jack Chrome. And she said, where did that name come from? And I said, I don't know. I said, I have no idea. It just came out of my mouth. So I filmed it, put it up as Jack Chrome. Rick Springfield saw it, contacted me and said, I think that is the most fantastic idea. 2 days later, he sent me a song that he did in the same makeup, another song. And I thought, damn, he's going to steal my idea. And
it's a race to the finish. Who's going to get the first 10 songs out?
So then he contacted me and said, listen, I love this idea. He said, no one's ever done an album about Dias de los Muertos. And I said, yeah, I'm pretty aware of it. And I said, I've been loving it for a long time. And he said,
I've called dibs, Rick.
Yeah. He said, would you let me, he said, would you be interested in doing an album with me on it? And I said, Rick, of course. As soon as he hung up the phone, that slippery slope started. I wrote 2 songs. I sent them to him. He wrote 2 songs, sent them back. I wrote 2 songs, sent them. And it just happened. We wrote it unbelievably fast. I recorded everything on what I'm talking to you now, my little laptop.
Everything.
And I was just about to send it over to him. And Jackie Barnes, who's Jimmy Barnes' son, heard it. And he said, I love it. He said, I think it's fantastic. He said, what are you doing about the drums? And I said, what are you talking about? They're on there. He said, that's a drum machine. I said, no. And he said, you're not sending it like that. I'm doing the drums. So he made me send him the tracks up on the not the Central Coast, on the Sunshine Coast. And he put all the drums down for me. And so that went over to Rick and they mixed it there. But it was all recorded on this laptop here.
Wow. All right, well, let's listen to another song from that, Death Drives a Cadillac. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this before I play it?
Yeah, I can't tell you too much about this. Rick and I are yin and yang. I'm the positive one. Rick comes a little bit from the darker side.
Yeah, right.
This is one of Rick's songs. And
okay.
This is about him. And he loves cars. He just bought an FJ Holden and had it sent over to America, and he's done it up. And so he's right into cars, and he's right into the sort of the death thing. And I said, Rick, you've got to be a bit lighter on this album. It's joyous, you know. So he's probably the dark side, so he could explain it more than me.
All right, well, we'll have to get him on to talk about it, but let's hear it. This is Death Drives a Cadillac. This is definitely the song of a man that loves his car. Isn't it? It's a man that loves his car. He's even written everyone's got a mixtape, everyone's got a go-to song, they wind down their windows, they drive it down. Only a true car fan, like Rick Springfield, Shannon Knoll, Ted perhaps from Driving My Car, but that writes a song that they can play in their own car about their car as they drive it. What a song!
Yeah,
All right,
that's a beauty, and I can see him driving around in his FJ over there with it.
Yeah, we'll have to. Maybe he should put on the paint and then sort of just drive around it. Well, that's the next YouTube video. All right, before we let you go, Russ, I'm wondering if we could I am huge on music history. I'm a big fan of it. I love to celebrate it. I love to sort of talk about it and to sort of get some of it down on record for us to remember and know these things that have happened over time. And so it would be remiss of me, the first time we've ever met, to not ask about The Real Thing. I know it was 1969. I know. Can you have a guess of how many times you've probably played that song in your career to date?
I couldn't even guess. No, but people say to me, "Don't you get sick of it?" It's almost like if I was a professional ballroom dancer.
Yeah.
And say I would go and do the foxtrot, or I'd do whatever those dances were, the tango or the rumba and things like that. And I was a professional,
yeah.
And I would go from town to town to dance. But the difference is I don't have a regular partner, so I go to that town and I find a new dance partner, and I dance with that person. So the dance has nuances that are very different to the next dance and the next partner you go. So every time I play The Real Thing, it's like a new dance with a new partner. I can play The Real Thing to a crowd of 100 people in a small club, acoustically by myself or with another player, or I can play it to a 10,000 audience with a band rocking, and it's a totally different dance, but it's the same song. So it gives me, I look at it like that, and I never get sick of playing any of the songs because they're always different, because the crowd always reacts very differently.
That's so interesting. And do you find that the songs almost present themselves to you in the moment? Or how would you describe that as, someone that's performed, you can speak to playing the same song so many times. Each time, it's kind of like, for me, I'm sort of going around a bit mumbly here to sort of trying to find this point, but it's kind of like playing sport where you just kind of meet the moment and then the thing happens. If you go too hard for a moment in sport, it kind of, you can force it and you can push it and something bad happens because you're not kind of fully there with it. Can you find words, metaphors, something that kind of describes how in a performance, a song like The Real Thing, in these various moments that happen everywhere, happens or presents itself in these different ways with these different partners? Is there anything?
It's a hard one because I've done it so many times, and when you've done something so many times, it's almost like you do it sometimes in a dream state, and there's another part of you that's doing it. Like, I will be doing The Real Thing sometimes, and I'll be thinking about the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight.
Yeah.
The heavyweight world championship fight. And I'll be thinking about that. And there's another part of me that's doing the song. Or I'll be thinking about what time I have to get up in the morning to catch the plane to go. So, but
your mind just sort of continues on its own.
It's not disingenuous. It's not like I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Something, because it's subliminal in me now, the song, and I can actually do it on autopilot, thinking about other things. And that part of me takes over, and I'll snap out of it, of course, at times, and look at the crowd, and the crowd gives you another boost, and then you'll be doing something, and then maybe you'll start thinking about something else, and the other part of you takes over. It's funny. It's like I wrote a song, "Asleep at the Wheel," which is like it is. Have you ever driven on a long trip
Yeah.
And you're driving your car and you're sitting behind the wheel and you're driving along, and then you go, I don't remember the last 10 kilometres. Was I concentrating on the road? Because I've been thinking and talking to, but you do. There's another part of you that clocks in and takes over.
Mm.
And I do that a lot. I'll be driving and I think, I can't remember the last 10 kilometres. And it's not because of my age. I've
No,
always
no, of
done
course
it,
not.
even when I was young. I used
Yeah,
to
I know what
race.
you're talking about.
I
I'm
used
sure
to
everyone
race
listening
motor.
does.
Yeah, I used to race motocross, and the same thing used to happen when I was doing that.
Yeah, it's I wonder if you're going to get to the end of this chat and go, I can't remember anything that happened.
Oh
It
no,
just
remember
passed
the
over.
chat? Yeah.
But okay, before you go, I've got a little surprise that I want to play you. Let's see if you can pick where this is, where this came from, what's happening here. This is another little the last test of the night. Here we go. Let's have a listen.
Now, here's probably our most spectacular production effort of the year. I know a lot of you thought it was made on film, but it's a studio effort, and I don't think they used more
From
resources
ABC.
making Cleopatra. Russell Morris and the real thing.
So what is this, Russ? Where is this from?
ABC. And
Yep.
Dick, I've forgotten his surname.
Henderson. Brian Henderson, right?
Oh, was that Brian Henderson?
That was Brian Henderson. He
Oh,
was
I thought-
introducing you. You've
Oh,
come
right.
out and he's talking about, he's saying that this performance that you guys did was the most expensive thing they've done. There's dancers, there's everything going on behind you, a swirling stage. Let's just have a listen to a bit more of the song. We'll just talk about it a bit more. Man, that band was hot, wasn't it? You know,
Unbelievable.
you talked about before about, you know, premier cats that were playing something different, but the guys that are on this, I didn't know this until researching. It was, you know, Brian Catt and Roger Hicks and the Zoot team, and I mean, what an ensemble.
Yeah, they were an incredible band and an incredible driver at the wheel, Ian Meldrum. He really had that thing. He knew where he wanted to head with it. It was great, and it was just one of those moments where you get in the studio and the band. That's a very modern feel that they've played. It's almost like a dance feel. It's
Yeah.
like it's got a skip to it. Richard Wright, the drummer, who was a beautiful drummer, he really gave it that beautiful feeling. Brian Catt on the organ and the keyboards, and Don Moody on the bass, and Roger Hicks on the guitar. It was just sensational.
And so at the time they were a soul band, right? Is that those guys
Yeah,
together?
sort of.
The group?
Yeah, the group. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And so one of the things about this is the length of the song. This has always interested me. You know, it's like 7 minutes. It went to number one in Australia, obviously, and it was number one in Chicago, in Houston, and NYC. But it was obviously the biggest selling track in Australia. Can you imagine if someone today would play a 7-minute song? You think it would happen?
No, the attention span is too short now. They'd have a 7-minute song in a disco that people dance. It'd go 15 minutes because those house mixes.
That's so true.
Dances. Yeah, but they don't play them on the radio, and it would never happen again. I don't think ever. The way radio is geared up for commerciality and sponsorship and things like that. If you notice that they tend to play the same songs over and over and over and over, because they have to get recognition. People have to lock on. Oh, that's my favorite song. I'm going to listen to that. Yeah, and
it's my favorite song because I've heard it 20 times over the past 20 hours.
I know it's but then they'll rotate it. They'll get another one. And they only cherry pick the songs that are going to reel people in. And unfortunately, people who play heavy rock and things like that will never get a look in as long as that situation continues.
And it's actually something I've been hearing. A radio presenter, I was talking about a song that just came out for me, and he off air was actually saying to me this is a thing that he's really concerned about. So it's interesting that there's more talk of this kind of thing happening. But one of the other things that I heard about, well, I read about through this, was that this was actually, for you, it was consecutive number ones off the first two. After this was part 3 into Paper Walls, which was co-written by Johnny Young again. And that was the first time that Australian artists had two consecutive number ones with the first two singles. This was a first.
Yeah, it was a first. We weren't thinking about that at the
Oh,
time.
of course, no, but that's pretty. That's an
Yeah,
amazing piece of history.
it was. But the problem is we knew that once you're at the top of the pile, there's only one way to go. You're going to
Yeah.
keep sliding. So, and I had gotten to the point where, because Ian was making everything bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and I kept saying to him, "We can't do this. I want to do something simple."
Yeah.
And we were disagreeing, and I said, "I want to write all my own songs from now on. I don't want to be dependent on other people." And yeah, it went a bit pear-shaped, but fortunately Ian and I became friends again, but we wouldn't talk to each other for about 6 years.
Wow. All of that is, I guess that's the next part of the conversation. There's so many stories that I'm sure you could share with us that we could dig into, you know, across all the music that you've made, all of the artists that you've played with on tour. Russell, I just have to thank you for coming on the podcast, sharing your time with me. It's been a real honor. Come and stop by anytime. Anytime you want to come and have a chat, you just call me up. We'll talk about whatever you want. You want to talk about frogs? You want to talk about science? We'll talk about whatever you want.
Science is my thing. I drive Dr. Carl crazy.
We'll do Russell Morris's top 3 songs that have to do with science, and we'll unpack that for 30 minutes. But ladies and gentlemen, please go and check out the show notes to hear any of the stuff we've talked about, to go and find out tour dates for when this episode comes out. Go and follow Russell everywhere. Of course, come and follow me everywhere. Thank you for stopping by. Russell Morris, thank you for being here at Ramble City.
Thanks for having me, Brad.